Your ultimate goal when it comes to growing muscle is you want to show the musculature, really the central nervous system. The amount of muscle you have is not enough for what you're trying to do. And the only medium of communication you have with your central nervous system is intensity. Today, we're going to talk about tips for lifters who are not seeing results. My name is Dr. John Jaquish. I'm a doctor of biomedical engineering. I have a very different perspective because of my background in developing medical devices and other areas of science that I've participated in. I've written scientific documentation with NASA scientists. I've participated in different projects relating to health of astronauts and space travel, specifically with bone density. I want to share all this knowledge and my different perspective with everyone out there who's trying to get as fit as possible. My real passion, my favorite audience is the people who are probably somewhere between 90 and 99% of the population who fit the description of ladies and gentlemen who go into a fitness facility, work out for months on end, and see absolutely no results. So there's an amazing statistic that was put together by lifehack.com. 90% of people quit their fitness program within 90 days of starting. Now, do they quit because they got great results? Probably not. They probably got zero results. I would guess there's also somewhere between 5 and maybe 9% of people who don't get any results, yet still continue to go, thinking that somehow it's just all going to happen one day. And it won't. So, why are individuals not seeing results? It's a complicated subject. It was actually the last chapter of my book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. And it's funny, I left it towards the end because I knew it was going to be the most criticized, and I want people to get through the more exciting information before figuring out what's wrong with most people. And I shouldn't say wrong, but it's most people will understand where I'm going with it. There is a very small population that has advantageous attachment points for tendons in the body. If you have a tendon insertion that allows you more leverage on the muscle, you fire more of the muscle in your weaker range of motion. So for example, most of us have a tendon insertion for our pectoral, the origin of the pectorals in the center of the chest. You have an insertion towards the top of the humerus underneath the bicep. However, if you're genetically gifted, it could be further down, which means you have a lever that's made out of the most elastic material in the world. So when you come down on a bench press, your body is primed to spring back in position. Now, these people who have this genetic situation, they don't know they have that. When they go into a gym or wherever doing some heavy exercise, they grow muscle because they're fatiguing more muscle in the stretched range of motion. So you see a lot of hype about that stretched range of motion. It's the most anabolic position of the breath. So the hype is hype, but there's real science there, and it's very important. And I've actually personally worked with Dr. Milo Wolf, who's the top researcher on that subject in sports performance. We frequently discuss the importance of that position and strategies to get to that position, maximizing gains while minimizing injury risk, because that stretched position is also where you're injured. So it's a balancing act where you want to have the most fatigue there, but you also want to have the lowest chance of injuring yourself. Because ultimately, sometimes lifters will say like, oh, forget injury risk, just go for it. Yeah, but then when you get injured, you can't train. So your goal is to be better long-term. And that no doubt is your goal. Otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. You got to have a strategy where you're maximizing gains, minimizing risks. When you meet older athletes, this is something I do when I talk about my approach. I meet a guy who has a really strong bench press, and I said, do me a favor, put your arm up with this. Most strong guys, they can't do that. In fact, Bill Kazmaier, one of the strongest people who's ever lived, when he wants to take a picture with somebody, he's a big guy. He's tall, taller than me. And I'm almost 6'1". So he goes next to somebody and he actually tilts his whole body. Then he lifts his arm up to put around them so he can have his arm around somebody in a picture. You see what's wrong there? The guy has almost no mobility in the shoulder because the joint is so damaged, and it almost brings tears to his eyes to just take his t-shirt off because he's got to lift his arms over his head. So you don't want this to happen to you, but you still want to keep making progress. So if you're not seeing results, you might just be in that 90% of people just doesn't adapt to weights very well. Well, I've got a phenomenal answer for you. And this also seems to be my answer to a lot of things, but each of those things might have some different reasons. So bear with me. Variable resistance. I've never met a person that did not adapt to variable resistance. So this is resistance that changes as you move. So one of the studies I did years ago was a clinical trial for a medical device that I invented. That's now called OsteoStrong. There's 300 clinics in 15 different countries that allow people access. We've treated over 1 million people for bone loss. It's typically a postmenopausal problem. So women over 50 years old, but everybody can get a benefit from this and build their bone density to be stronger. So the principle is loading in the position that you naturally absorb high impact. So for the upper extremities, you see the back of my hand and line of my clavicle, 120-degree angle from upper to lower arm. That is where you either absorb or produce the greatest amount of force. When looking at the differences of positions, you want to load the body so that what you're doing is difficult in all positions. Lifting irregular weights only difficult back here. In fact, if you can handle it back here, then it's easy for the rest of the movement. So in essence, it's only relevant when it's in that lengthened range of motion, which is why some people, especially when they don't have access to heavy weights, like you see inmates when they do push-ups, they only lift themselves a few inches off the ground. They're trying to only do the difficult part of the movement because that's the only place where the weight is relevant in the first place. The better way is to load the body in accordance to your biomechanics. So very high weight here, sort of a normal weight here, and a little bit lighter here. So you go easier on the joints, but after you've exhausted the stronger range of motion and the middle range of motion, then you get to the stretch range of motion. You're already pre-exhausted with all the other tissue that has called themselves out. Basically, the way it works is once a cell becomes exhausted, it participates less in the movement. And so it's been stimulated already. At that point, you're trying to just stimulate the other cells that have. You can't feel this happening. I mean, other than velocity changes and you can't lift as much as fast. And that's really a feeling, but you don't really know what cells are happening. It's just not, there's no feedback for that. The fact that you might not have an advantageous tendon layout doesn't make any difference because you're offloading when you get to the point of exhausting that stretched range of motion so that it's your maximum potential when you go to here, here, here. And as you come back, a typical set of chest press for me, I'll go to fatigue 5 times in one set. And that's 5 times with a fresh muscle that's full of glycogen, which means I can really put my maximum effort into all those experiences so that I'm basically getting the benefit of multiple sets in one set. And then if I add like rest pause, and that's kind of an advanced technique. So we'll get to that in another video, but it's a way to increase the intensity and shorten the workout time. Because ultimately, the greater amount of work and the smaller amount of time is a more intense exposure to the stimuli. Your ultimate goal when it comes to growing muscle is you want to show the musculature, really the central nervous system, that the amount of muscle you have is not enough for what you're trying to do. And the only medium of communication you have with your central nervous system is intensity. So if you're showing the central nervous system that greatest efforts multiple times that are kind of close together, that you don't have enough musculature to try and get to what you're trying to do. You go to fatigue. So the body knows, okay, fatigue muscle multiple times. We need to add more tissue here. Now there's two types of growth that happens. There's sarcoplasmic and myofibrin growth. I'll get into those in a different video, but just showing the body that deficit in a short period of time. So intensity, this is what the body sees as the language of, oh, okay, we need to grow. That's how that happens. And when you're doing it with variable resistance, if you're one of those people who just doesn't respond well to weights, or you haven't been responding, or you've been on a plateau, this will bust through that plateau and allow you to get to your genetic potential. You will do phenomenal.
If this video helped you, I want you to subscribe and follow. I'm going to put out videos on a regular basis. I think they're going to help a whole lot of people, especially if you're one of those people that doesn't just instantly grow from lifting regular weights. We've got the answer for you.